They're always having conversations and they're drunk.
Can you look at the camera?
And as ready as we're going to be, welcome back to the Dr. Z Show. Hello. So this week we have a guest host, Fry. Fry is our guest host.
Hi.
He's the new face. They're not going to answer you, Fry. This is recorded.
Fair enough.
They will be watching it.
Hey, maybe they'll answer you in the comments.
Maybe.
Don't tell our audience what to do.
I'm not telling them what to do. I'm telling them what they've been doing.
If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe to the Dr. Z Show.
There you go.
It is on a weekly basis. Usually.
Yeah, there you go. Usually.
There you go. Usually.
So, this week we're going to be talking about Magic, the social distancing. But first, since Fry is our new guest host and has not yet been on the show, he has some questions for us to answer.
For us to answer, not him.
No, he's asking the question.
To answer for us.
Shall I ask questions?
No.
Okay.
No.
Fry, what is a useless skill that you have?
I can wiggle my ears.
Incredibly useless.
That
is incredibly useless.
That was also worryingly fast. I think the rest of us had to think about what ours were.
No, this is a skill I've had for a long time. It took a long time to practice to get to the point that they could wiggle.
Oh wait, you practiced and honed this skill.
Did. Oh yeah, like you always. I don't even know why anymore, but I just remember being like, I want to wiggle my ears. And so like I tried to figure out like what muscles to move to get my ears to move, and eventually I succeeded. And it's pretty useless, yes.
Along those lines of something that I practiced a lot to figure out how to do that's useless is I can move my pinky toes.
Sweet.
Jacob.
Why?
Why?
Never mind. No. Asking why Jacob does anything is futile.
Right, I got it. I caught it. It's great.
Okay. So, what is a pet peeve, or like your biggest pet peeve?
I gotta say the old person answer of turn signals.
People that don't use turn signals?
Yes. Holy God, they should be purged from the earth.
I don't
Purged from the earth. That is strong.
Strong. But I agree, living in Kentucky.
You guys are wrong. Maryland.
No.
Maryland.
To
get your driver's license in Maryland.
I'm not saying.
To get your driver's license in Maryland, you have to go to Virginia, cause an accident, and make it back to the Maryland DMV.
When I was doing my master's, my first joke thesis recommendation was that every major traffic jam in the United States had at least one car with a Maryland plate in it.
That is probably accurate.
My professor laughed at it for about a week, and then he told me to change my thesis.
Valid.
Had you already started writing it, though? You were like, oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, I definitely had like a page and a half of nonsense written out to justify it, and all the research that needed to be done and who I could go talk to. It was great. I had a good time with that.
Okay.
Something that you like that no one else seems to like.
I will say the Horatio Hornblower series on A&E. I can rewatch it like 50 times. No one else in the world seems to. If they know what it is, they go like, "That's bad." If they don't know what it is, they don't watch it.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, so
I have no idea
couldn't say. I couldn't say either way whether or not I like it or don't like it.
Horatio Hornblower.
Horatio Hornblower was a book series by C.S. Forester in the 50s.
Okay.
And in the mid 90s, A&E made it into 3 separate miniseries where they were going through the life. It got canceled, so they never finished it. But the episodes they did make, I really liked.
Too bad it's not like a Portrait of Dorian Gray thing where now he's just like he lives forever because the show never ended, so his life like never ends.
Well, the books never ended either because he never wrote them sequentially. So like you've got a gap in the series between like when he's an admiral and when he's an ensign, or not an ensign, excuse me, a midshipman. And so you've got this huge like you've got these random gaps in the storyline.
That's
He didn't write
like
the
a really
nickname?
poor choice.
His nickname amongst his shipmates is Horny.
That's very like 50s.
Yeah.
That's very 50s.
Wow.
Like what's the one
but
from
this
Iron
happens
Man?
during the Napoleonic Wars. Like
No.
this
Yes.
is
What's
this
the
is
one
set-
from Iron Man? The instead of like straight talk or like honest, like brutally honest, the term to give someone like a talk like that was to give them good dick.
I mean, it is British.
Real thing.
What do you
Real
expect?
thing. So there's a if you can find it, there's a comic panel from Iron Man where he's talking to Captain America, and he's like, and Iron Man is saying, he's like, you need some good dick, and Captain America's like, yeah, I do.
I think I've read that fan fiction.
Yeah, but it's not just a fan fiction, which is worrying. Anyway, continuing, something that you dislike that everyone else seems to like.
Did I? Oh, Well, it's hard to answer because I'm politically conservative. So there's a lot of ways I could answer that question.
Fair.
But I'll say I like the two-party system in the United States, and I like how it's structured in such a way that, like, even though you don't always have your best two choices that you want to have, it's the fact that you always have a two-party system that controls that there will always be a choice, which I think is an advantage to the U.S. system. I don't find many people who agree with that sentiment, though.
That's
So if I find-
interesting.
That is interesting.
Given what I know about you, that's very interesting. Huh.
To
It's
the
not that
said
I don't-
U.S. system, did you mean UK?
No, U.S. UK system is a parliamentary system, and they tend to have to, generally, except in the last few elections, a single party can't take control. So they have to unite with a bunch of little parties in order to form a coalition, and they form a coalition government. In the United States, with a two-party system, it's very binary. It's a go or no go for one party or the other. Yes,
think
you have
Jacob's-
some third parties.
I think Jacob's
But-
trying to point out that there's like the independent party and like the Green Party
No,
and stuff.
no. You said
Oh.
you like the two-party system, and then you said as opposed to the U.S. system, and I was confused by that.
As
But-
opposed to the U.S. system.
At least that's.
I don't know what I was saying.
Okay. Well, in the U.S.
In the U.S., I like the way the system is structured, and I like the constitutional system. I think that there's a lot of value in the way it's structured, and I'm a big fan of like hard political fights on the floor because I find that you get a better result when someone has to fight hard for their position.
I have
Go ahead.
I would say I have less of a problem with the two-party system, and I have a more of a problem with the voting systems, like closed voting versus open voting, and all of that. Coming from Virginia, which is an open voting state, to an open primary state, moving to Kentucky, which is closed, it's difficult. I didn't have to register with a party. I could vote in both Democratic and Republican primaries, and I could choose which candidate I wanted from both parties, so I was having the best options I wanted for both.
Yeah.
Here, I had to register whichever way I wanted to, and then I can only vote in half of it, and I just feel very limited, especially in Kentucky as a more liberal person in a very red state. I feel like my vote gets drowned out really heavily. And
Yeah,
it's-
that's a real advantage of the Virginia system.
yes.
The Commonwealth is great in the way it allows you're allowed to effectively switch parties every single election because
Or just
you're
not
allowed
even
to.
be a party. I was a registered independent in Virginia, and that didn't matter.
You're
and it was-
registered if you vote in a primary in Virginia. You're considered registered in that party for a year.
Yeah, I guess.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
It just doesn't matter because normally you're not running for office, so who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, who cares?
Jake, what Fry was saying brings up like the pet peeve that I think I've brought up on the show before, but like when journalists say that politicians are like, Fry was talking about like the big fights on the floor, and so when journalists say like, so and so like slams opponent like other other I think of, like I'm like I don't want to ever read that again unless somebody's like getting suplexed or like you see like Elizabeth Warren like jumping over her desk to body slam someone. Like I don't ever want to read that a political person slammed another political person. Like no. They need to
All
fight.
right,
They need to actually fight. They need to actually fight.
Growing up in this area was really interesting. So my parents are very, very conservative, but their best friends growing up and my godparents were some of the most liberal people in the world. They worked for the Democratic Party. They were lobbyists. And I remember going over to their house, or they'd come over to our house, and there would be just huge political fights just in the living room. They would just sit there and argue and argue and argue. At the end of the night, they'd all hug and say, see you next week. And like I grew up thinking that was a normal aspect of daily life, is that you should be willing to argue your position, but understand that just because you have that position doesn't mean that A, everyone's going to agree with you, or B, that you're always going to be right. So
that makes you like a significant minority.
Oh, I get it.
Well, it's like a lot of people today are like, oh, if you disagree with me, you're a piece of shit.
That's why I get called a rational feminist, which frustrates me to no end.
Rational?
Irrational.
Oh, I was like, what?
No, whenever I discuss politics with conservatives here, they call me a rational feminist, especially the guys. And it's
so
not.
Here's what you do: you don't discuss politics with them.
You underestimate
how
much guys like pushing buttons, especially on topics like feminism, and they try to tell you how to run your body.
No, in Kentucky, no, that's
in Kentucky.
I can
especially in Kentucky.
I have to like add in Kentucky to my like disagreement with that.
Come back to Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of friends here who I do enjoy, and I do overall enjoy my
Bring them with you. I mean, they live in Kentucky, like, so you got nothing to lose.
Anyway, in like the near future or in college, so they're just trying to get through.
Moving on, so we can get to the actual show.
Yeah.
What is your real life alignment with your D&D alignment? With an example, I think I know what it is, and I have an idea, but.
I would say I borderline lawful good, neutral good, somewhere in there. And I say that just because of the nature of my career.
Okay, now that makes sense.
I mean, I grew up in a Navy household. I joined the Navy, and I still work for the Navy. That tends to come with a respect for the structures that is the structure of how things work. And I consider myself a good person. I care about people, and I care about how things work, and I care about my people. And so, like, I would say that makes me a good person. I work very hard to. So Tony just posted no.
Not you. It's not to you.
Jacob's going off.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Last bit but not least. What is your biggest? When I was originally asked the question, what is your most nerd shit? But Jacob changed the question to your biggest nerd brag. And if it is the picture on the wall behind you, then so be it. But
no, I'd say my biggest nerd brag was getting through one of the most intense Navy programs there was. I was a Navy nuke, but I was also an elite Navy nuke. So we were on the design side. We got special schooling, special training. I got to work with some of the truly most intelligent people I've ever met in the world, which was incredible. The way you should think about it is, like, imagine you were being hired on to NASA, and you're being trained by the people who developed the entire Apollo program from scratch. And those were the people who were teaching me when I was coming in through the Navy on the nuclear side. So the guys who invented nuclear reactors and the nuclear Navy.
Yeah, wow.
Like it was an incredible experience. young engineers who are looking for a place to work, I highly recommend trying to get into a program like that. I loved my time there. It was fantastic, but it's one of the most nerdy things I think I've ever done in my life. Like, it's highly intensive,
Yeah.
high calculus, high math.
You say that, and I'm like processing everything you're saying, like based on what you're actually saying. But in the back of my head, there's just this little voice going, math, 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 math.
Holy hell. Yeah, it was it tested the limits of my ability to learn. That's for sure.
Okay, so it's like an
Nuclear
actual,
engineering
it's like an
will do
actual nerd thing.
Oh yeah.
I think
Um,
that's like the most actual nerd answer we've ever had.
It's like the power school is like its own master's program in specific design for the Navy, and it's taught by professors, actual professors who they bring in, and actual scientists who have been working on this in some cases for 30 and 40 years. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Oof. So on that note, that's all the questions we have for our new guest host. So I have some other questions so that we're not tangenting for 7 centuries. So we're going to talk about Magic: The Social Distancing, also known formally the game formerly known as Magic: The Gathering. But since we're still in apocalypse mode, we are Magic: The Social Distancing. So we'll go in this order based on my screen, just so because I have the questions and y'all are probably in different areas of your screen based on
Probably.
who's speaking to whom. So we'll start with Jacob. We'll go to Brenna, and then we'll end. Well, we'll go to Fry, and then we'll end with myself. How or why, Jacob, did you start playing Magic: The Gathering?
My brother's friends mailed him, I think, the Liliana versus Jace dual decks,
Okay.
and we played, and we were like, "This is fun." And then, well, from there, my brother got a lot more into it. For a short amount of time because he had, like
Other hobbies.
yeah, and he also had the income too, and he realized after he built one of the most nasty decks in Standard at the time, in Magic Online, he was like, "Well, this is never going to end. I should get out while I can." And so
Right, because Standard
quit.
is bonkers.
yeah, so he quit. He quit after that, but then I don't remember exactly how I think I probably told you about it, and then I don't remember what the first pack of cards or whatever I bought was. Oh no! The very first set of cards I ever bought was
Scarves.
I was at Walmart and I bought a Knights versus
The
Goblins.
Knights Goblins.
Yeah, I bought the Knights versus Goblins dual decks, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." And then
I'm just gonna throw my answer in here. I know I said I was gonna go last, but I'm just gonna throw my answer in here because we did a Magic episode that was a long time ago, but it was just Jacob and I. So we've kind of already answered this first question. But Jacob got me into it because he kept we used to be like garbage humans at the time. We played League of Legends all the time. And so he would be like, "Oh, I can't play tonight. I'm going to play Magic." And finally, I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And so I learned to play Magic based on not playing League of Legends. And actually, I quit League not soon after that. Not to play Magic, but because I realized it was turning me into a garbage person. Anyway, Brenna, how or why did you start playing Magic?
Well, I started playing because of you, so it's this horrible chain effect of disease.
Well, Claire plays now because of me, so I'm
Yeah.
just infecting the earth with Magic,
Yes,
not with anything else that I know of.
No, I started playing because of you and Jacob, and we all got into it. And I took a hiatus when I moved to Kentucky for 6 months, and then
Infect.
finally, and then
Jacob says we started playing during New Phyrexia because Infect was very popular then. So
yeah, there you go.
my infecting the earth comment has a double meaning.
have
Accidental ones.
the mechanic built into you. Yeah, I started playing during, it was the tail end of the Theros block.
Which you loved because Greek mythology.
Because Greek mythology, which is, I think, one of your selling points too for me, was like,
Mhm.
they incorporate real life lore into it, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, like I'll play.
You started playing in Born of the Gods,
Yeah.
the middle of the Theros, because I remember the content, or was it a draft? You were in like a draft or something, and you were playing against somebody, and you mentioned that you had just started, and they brought out this like
That's not my
huge box of commons and uncommons.
And it was all garbage. No, that was I had just built my first standard deck. That was when
Okay.
I worked with Tom, and Tom and I built my first standard deck, which was
Tom,
mono
okay.
white humans, mono white human enchantments. And I played in a tournament that night, and the first guy I played against who I beat, and he was the only guy I beat that night. He was like, "Oh, you're like starting to actually get into Magic and like collect your own cards.
Yeah, okay.
Take my box of like 2,000 garbage with rares and uncommons," and like I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, yeah, I recently went through those, and
they're all bad.
They're all bad. Or I went through them pretty shortly after, and I was like, oh, they're all bad.
It was Tom that helped you, right?
Yes.
Tom Turn? Tom? Okay. Just there's lots of Toms. At the
Yes,
store,
no,
so.
it was Tom Turn. And then I took a hiatus when I moved to Kentucky, and then I got back into it because I found out that there was a local store that did Commander Night every Thursday. So I would go and I would play Commander every night, and I would for a while I was riding my bike over there, and then I just started walking over there too, and it's like a half-hour walk, but like whatever. I didn't particularly care. But yeah, no. And then I got super into it again, and here I am now.
So Fry, the big question. How or why did you start playing?
So when I started, Magic had just been published. So this is back in like the alpha beta time. Old times. And literally none of us had any idea what we were doing. We had a small school group, and we bought like 5 packs a piece and tried to piecemeal together some sort of deck. I don't even remember what we had. I mean, my favorite card was Prodigal Sorcerer, because I could ping people for damage with it. It's like, ha 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 ha, I've got you on a 20-turn clock.
After turn, what is that card? 4 mana? After 4?
And like I played pretty much, I mean, we didn't really have a local shop back in those days. We played at school mostly, and typically whenever a new set would come out, you'd buy like a couple of packs and like try to modify your deck, and you'd literally just share with friends. I did that until like 98, 99, and then I gave all my cards away.
Oh wow, okay, I didn't know this.
To one of the people at my school who was also playing, because I had lost most interest. I mean, we weren't playing very much by the mid 90s to late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to 2012, and
oh really? It was that recent?
And I was at work, and there was a group. So I was trying to figure out how to build a relationship with a bunch of the younger engineers and other organizations I was working with. And I figured out that they had, through a friend, that they had a Magic group. So I connected with one of the guys I knew in the group and asked them, like, what do they play? Like, and they played Commander, which I had, like, what the hell is this thing?
Right.
So I built this 5-color monstrosity Dino Timmy deck, and attempted to like establish a relationship with these guys, and realized that like Magic had fundamentally morphed to something that I had never imagined by that point.
By 2012, yeah, it was a different monster.
So between 2012 and 2013, I got pretty good at like the mechanics of it. And one of the things that we switched away from Commander in that group, although I started playing Commander over at Curio Cavern. So I was still playing Commander, but they all had a cube. So each one of us built a cube, and we would bring our cards into the office, and we would draft it on Monday, and then we would play the deck we drafted the rest of the week. So Tuesday through Friday, we would play each other, and then we would shuffle it up, hand the guy back his cube, and then another person would bring their cube into the office.
Okay, real quick. So one, because I'm glad you brought this up, but two, also because we need to like explain things that like we might know, but no one else really like has any understanding of.
Sure.
You said you built a Timmy deck. What does that mean? Like I know what that means, and like you guys know what it means, but like
giant
to
stompy
explain.
monster things that single focused attack, kill, rar, munch,
Okay.
munch.
Fair.
It's a reference to oh golly, what was the show? South Park.
Yeah.
Timmy, because Timmy would build in that show, he'd build things that were always like monster based.
Okay. So second question, and this is like one of those things that's like, it's like a Parks and Rec thing. Like at this point, I'm afraid to ask and because I think I know, but I don't ever talk about it because I'm not 100% sure, and I'm definitely too lazy to look it up. What is a cube? My understanding is it's like a contained draft.
Yes. So a cube is a minimum of about 360 cards that are cards that you will shuffle up into packs of 15 cards, and you'll hand 3 packs to 8 different players. And then you draft like you're drafting a normal pack at the shop. So like you go in for a draft, you pick a card, you pass to the left, pick a card, pass to the left. When you're done with that pack, you pick a card, pass to the right, and you build a deck from the 45 cards that result.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will build bigger than 360 card cubes just to build some variants into it or to get multiple pods going. It's generally speaking singleton, but it's not always singleton. You can build it literally however you want. So if you like certain themes, you can build that into your cube. If you don't like certain themes, you can exclude them. Some people exclude whole colors.
Okay.
One of my favorite cubes that we played with a group that I played with is a cube called a desert cube. And it's a cube where, in addition to having to draft your normal cards, you have to draft all your lands too. And there's a limit on basics. There's a lot of really bad lands. And you generally speaking, you don't end up with 17 lands to even play. So you're playing whatever lands you ended up drafting. So you end up having a choice of. It's a lot of fun, actually. You find yourself in a. It can be
rocks. I'd be like all the rocks. I need every rock I get.
You have a deck of nothing but mana rocks and no creatures.
So like you've got some really powerful cards, but a lot of times you have to be careful with drafting it because if you don't get the right color of mana to cast it, it just sits at your sideboard. You won't be able to play.
Yeah. Oh, ouch.
If you ever watch The Professor on Tolarian Community College, he does a great series on how to make a cube, how to play a cube, how to develop your cube, like where your resources are. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that series. I actually have an unstable cube.
That's awesome.
Go ahead.
I was saying my Christmas gift from my boyfriend was 2 boxes of unstable. So I had all these unstable cards, and I didn't know what to do with them because we can't play them in standard, obviously. So I just made a cube.
And so, also, just because you said this, and because Jacob pointed this out, unstable is an unset, and the unsets in Magic are cards that are like they're made like as a joke, and you can they've started things cost like half of a mana and all kinds of wacky rules. So those are the unsets. The brainchild of Mark Rosewater?
Yeah, Mark Rosewater is the head designer for most of the unsets because he loves. It's also his playground for new mechanics, which we can talk about once we get to the new, like, because I think we want to talk about the new bit. Augmented was something that came out of Unstable where you combine two
energy.
cards.
No, okay, never mind.
No, you'd combine two cards.
Well, that was in
Paladin?
Shadows over Innistrad.
It's different though, because Shadows, it was 2 creatures come out, and if they're both on the battlefield, then it morphs.
Mhm.
It was
That was meld.
That's meld, which is
Meld.
yeah, it's slightly different. Like that's what like the Bruna and the Gisela would do, and they created the weird Eldrazi. With augmented, you'd play a creature, and it would have an ability. So like when like the best example is like Adorable Kitten. Adorable Kitten was like a 2-drop white cat, and it was
Mhm.
whenever this creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. And then there's the augmented creature type, and it would change the front half of that text. So you would
That's the new set has that.
that's what I was talking
Okay,
about.
that's where you're going
This is
with
where
this.
mutate.
Okay.
That's where I'm going with this. I'm
Mutate came
explaining-
from augmented.
Mutate
Interesting.
came from augmented because Maro and I read a lot about Unstable because I find the unsets incredibly interesting. I was reading a lot about it, and he said this is my playground. This is where I and the other developers figure out where we want Magic to go in the future. And as silly as that seems, because we're doing things like Flying Mantis, where you throw a card halfway across the room, who says Magic can't be that?
Enter the dungeon.
Yeah, enter the dungeon.
Play a Magic subgame under the table.
Yeah, who
Oh
says
golly,
that,
it's like the
Magic
early
can't
days of
be that?
Magic.
Yeah.
That's
It's fun
very
though.
interesting. You wouldn't think that a set that is like the joke set would change the future, like real sets of Magic.
Right, here we are.
But
playing
also, yeah. So we're going into we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But Jacob pointed out that I should explain what rocks are. I said I built a deck full of rocks. The colloquial term a rock in Magic is something that you use, usually an artifact, but not always. If it's not an artifact, it's a creature, and you typically call it like a dork. So a mana rock or mana dork is something that you use instead of a land to make mana, to create mana or to generate mana, whatever word you want to use, to play other cards. So that's rocks, unsets, Mark Rosewater. Also, it's kind of late for us to point this out. We are not sponsored by Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast or any of these people. We just really like playing Magic.
Hey
It's just a
Brenna, do
bunch
you
of
have
things,
any?
yes.
Do you
Yeah.
have any of the Christmas set uncards that they publish?
I don't, and I want them because they're all wild, like Pie in the
Ooze, the
Sky.
You'll lose. The best.
Yes, yeah, they're all wild, and I think. Oh, I think I was sick the day they were giving some out at my LGS one year, and I was sick the day that they were giving them out, and all my friends had them, and I was really sad.
My nephew
Works.
runs an unleague with his play group. They have to, and he has Clam Tribal.
Oh my god.
Yes, Alexander Clamilton.
Yeah, we've been meaning. I've been meaning to make an undeck because one of the guys in my playgroup wants to build the Squirrels deck. He already had a modern Squirrels deck.
Real squirrels.
Yes, so like actually
Kind of
modern
competitive.
playable squirrels. And then he was like, "But squirrels, I have to now."
In college, when we played like casual 60 all the time. There was a guy who's, much to his disappointment, was nicknamed Squirrels because he had a really competitive Squirrels deck. And I remember a game, there were like 12 of us, like these monstrous games of just like way too many people. And on one end of the table he was sitting, and on the other end of the table somebody else was sitting. And so this other person, Chris, stands up and he's like, "Hey, like, I'm gonna attack you with these 3 creatures." And the Squirrel stands up and he's like, "All right, my biggest blocker is a 1 million squirrel." And Chris sort of looks at him and is like, "Never mind." He sits back down and he's like, "Oh no." Squirrels are crazy.
Was that also the same game where Squirrel stood up and was just like, "Okay, that entire
Yeah.
half of the table,
Yeah,
can
the
I get
whole
to block
board,
anything?"
all of you are gone.
Yeah,
Yes, that was the same game.
same game.
I want to build a squirrel EDH deck.
hmm
Can you?
Yes, well, because now there's the Squirrel Commander. There's the Black-Green Squirrel Commander,
Yeah.
Okay.
and she has acorn counters. It's great.
This will
Yeah.
be pretty simple for the next question. It'll be pretty simple to answer, I think, because we're already all there. Jacob, what's your preferred formats? Actually, real quick, I can explain the formats, and you guys can interrupt me when I'm wrong. Standard is first format that you really think of when it comes to Magic, and that's the most recent 3,
2
2. It's 2 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years.
The 2 most recent sets, or 2
2
years.
Recent
2 years.
Yeah.
So any cards that are 2 years or younger can be placed into a 60 card deck. You can have up to 4 of the same card, not including basic lands, and you build a deck around that. And it's very expensive. People will argue with me till they're blue in the face about this, but they're wrong. It's a very expensive format to keep up with because
If you
it's
wanna
the
be
brand new
competitive.
card. If you want to be competitive, it's the brand new cards that come out, which are always marked up, because everyone's trying to get them to play their standard decks. And cards will, once they pass the 2-year mark, they're old. They're not available. They're not worth anything in standard, and they usually are worth a lot less monetarily. So even if you're trading them in or trading them for the newer cards, they have a lot less worth. I don't like standard, in case that was unclear. So standard, modern. Am I missing one in between those?
Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Someone explain Pioneer. I'm not very good at explaining Pioneer.
It's a
It's
new
Return-
format.
It's
Oh.
past 8 years. It's Return to Ravnica forward.
Okay, so Pioneer is standard, but 8 years instead of 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Same rules
No,
apply.
it doesn't. It's non-rotating.
Oh,
Yeah, it's everything forward from there.
everything after Return of... Okay, that's
Yes.
interesting. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And modern... It has the same rules in ban list as standard, correct, or no?
Yes, I believe.
Okay,
No.
so the...
It does
No.
not. It has a different ban list.
Oh, it
Okay,
does. Okay.
for reference, a ban list, usually they're controlled by wizards, except the ban list for Commander, EDH, whatever.
Because
you
there is
call it-
no panel for
There's
each
no...
game.
Right. It's not competitive. The ban list is cards that are not allowed to be put in your deck. Usually it's because the cards are broken, they're too powerful, or they have like wild combos that the developers didn't foresee or didn't really look at or didn't think about when they were building the sets. So ban lists is usually I think it's like 20 cards usually, less than that. It tends to be pretty small and it changes. So Pioneer, Modern. Fry, do you want to explain Modern? I think you used to play Modern. Either that or you know a lot of people that play Modern. No? Am I wrong?
I mean, I know enough people who play Modern, but Modern is 8th edition forward, and of course they have their own ban list.
So
generally
it's
speaking-
old Pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's also an expensive format. I would argue it's more
Yeah.
expensive than standard, honestly.
Well, because some of the cards that are
one-time
considered
expense. It's
Right,
more
that's
It is
a
a one-time
one-time
expense. Yeah.
expense. So before I start throwing a bunch more jargon out, a staple is a card that is in a format. So you would say it's a standard staple or a modern staple or a commander staple, whatever. A staple is a card in a format that's considered like, oh, you need this card, or
mean,
like,
it's like a
oh,
staple
this
food.
card. Yeah, okay, a staple
It's
food.
like a staple food.
So bread is a staple food, unless you have a gluten allergy or you don't play Sol Ring.
there,
No?
sure,
Okay, a little
Yeah.
chuckle from Jacob. It was worth it.
sure, yeah.
You wanna
And
use
anyone that
rock.
plays Magic, I guess, will understand. Modern is expensive, I think, because of modern staples. That's usually the big expense. Also, the older cards. The older a card is, typically, the less copies of the card exist. I mean,
The
these are
harder it
pieces
is
of
to find.
cardboard, so they do wear and tear, and eventually, go away, cease to exist, get thrown out, whatever.
I mean, let's be
Um,
honest. Modern wouldn't exist if Legacy didn't use reserve list cards.
Yes.
Okay, so you can explain Legacy then, since you brought it up.
Well, Legacy is a format that It's one of 2 eternal formats, which means it goes back to the earliest days of Magic and uses some of the earliest days cards. The other one being vintage. The distinction between vintage and legacy, there's more to it than this, but it's effectively the Power 9 cards. Power 9 are the specific cards that are just so powerful that they are banned in every other format except for vintage, and those are the 5 Moxes, Time Twister,
Ancestral Walk,
I
Ancestral
have them
Recall?
pulled up. Yeah, it's
Ancestral Recall.
Ancestral Recall, Time Twister, Time White, Time Walk,
Yeah, Time Walk.
and then Black Lotus.
And all the Moxes.
And then
And-
all 5 Moxes for each color.
And the theme there is blue or very fast mana, and those are vintage and legacy are very fast formats, generally speaking. Like turn
Turn
2,
3, turn
turn
4.
2, turn
game's
3,
over.
game is over, and the game has been won. And they're very expensive. I think an expensive legacy deck is on the order of $20,000 to $25,000. Vintage deck, you're looking at like 50,000 or more.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, these
Ugh.
are, and
Fuck.
when people talk about Magic the Gathering being an investment, this is what they're talking about. These are monetary investments that accrue interest over time because
Honestly, yes. Like
this
I've
is
heard of
literally-
vintage decks being sold for like $75,000.
yeah,
And if you're like, not to like shit on anyone, but like if you're gonna put that much money into your hobby, that needs to be like your only fucking hobby. Like holy shit, that's a lot of money.
Well,
or you should have the exposable income to do so. Like,
and let's be perfectly blunt here. Legacy and Vintage are more or less dead because no one can afford to come into those formats, and the people who play them are getting smaller and are becoming smaller and smaller groups.
and they're
that's
holding
what-
on to their cards too, so they're harder to acquire cards as well.
Right. And
not
if-
just
for
because
people
of
who don't-
their
yeah.
age.
And if for
Yeah.
people who don't know who the reserve list is, the reserve list is a group of cards that Wizards of the Coast, the company who makes the game, has promised they will never print another copy again. As a
They've
consequence,
gone back on that a few times, though, haven't they?
Mhm, they have.
They had a weaker policy in the past, and then sometime around 2010,
That
2011,
was
they strengthened the
Eternal-
policy.
That was the first Masters reset, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And they got in trouble because some people were complaining that they were putting things in from the vaults that were considered reserve list cards. They said, well, we have
Yeah.
a practice that says if this is a promo card, we consider these promo cards. And eventually they internally decided, all right, we're going to shore up what the reserve list is again. And they shortened the list, but then they
They
made
took
it,
Mana Crypt off the list.
They
They
took
took-
Mana Crypt off the
that's right.
list.
and then they took what was left and made it a hard stop. They would never do it again. And that was the birth of MTG Finance, when you had people who were buying up as many copies that were in the market and then selling them for 5 to 10 times the value. And so the price went from, so if you go back to like 2004, you could get any of the dual lands for $20 or less.
Yeah.
Today, if you want to get an Underground Sea, for example, it's a $400 card.
Fuck.
Your
Yeah.
Fuck.
Your
Jesus,
cheapest dual
that's a
land
lot.
is $100. So you're no longer in a position where
few.
those cards are affordable to your average player.
I have
I mean,
a
I-
few, but they've been pulled from packs. was
And I
lucky.
remember like Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune was a $5
Oh,
card.
shit, yeah.
Now it's 90.
You
And
have
Yeah.
how many copies of that card, Fry?
more than I should, but most of them I bought when they were $8.
Yeah. Wheel of
Yeah.
Fortune.
The actual monetary aspect of Magic the Gathering.
You could write a
isn't-
thesis on it.
You could write an
You
entire
could write a
piece on it.
finance thesis on it.
You genuinely, like, if you were going into economics and finance and like want a master's degree thesis, that's your master's thesis right there, and you could probably take it into a PhD, because that is how intense this is. In the same way, like we were talking about last episode, where the WoW blood
Oh yeah, the
curse,
WoW plague being
the WoW plague is affecting the like actual study of pandemics and diseases. This could be like the.
Jacob,
the-
it's okay that she uses the word because that's not the focus of today's episode.
It's not the focus of today's
Before you
episode.
say anything.
In the same way, you could do a whole deep intellectual study on how the prices of Magic the Gathering cards and the stock market are very similar. And
Okay.
it's wild.
So I'm going to retract on something here because I'm looking up the MTG Goldfish price tags. The top 10 vintage metagame, top 10 decks, their average price is $25,000. That's vintage.
That's so much more
That's
reasonable.
still a lot of money. Like,
For Legacy, the average price is around $3,000.
that's still a lot of money to put in one deck that you might not ever play.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I think the price is dropping though. I've been watching some of the reserve list cards, and the prices have been going down a bit.
Because no one's playing those formats anymore, as you said.
And because of current pandemic situation,
Yeah, people are selling all their cards.
They might
pay-
die.
Because they can't.
Well, I mean,
afford
yeah,
to
or to pay their
live.
medical bills. Like, holy shit. Like,
I guess what I'm saying is now's a good time to
Fair.
buy into reserve list cards.
yeah, let's go.
Apparently, yeah.
We'll go all in. We'll buy one legacy deck. We'll just mail it to each other.
It'll be great. It'll be great.
It'll be like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Legacy deck. You have to write a
no.
letter that goes with good things that happen to you, or however that story goes. Anyway, so real quick,
No. If we wanted to really ruin everything, we would write the letter on the back of each card.
Jake, fuck
Oh,
you.
God.
No,
Jacob?
bad Jacob.
Jacob,
How
That's
about
it.
no.
we braille the
Stay.
cards?
Wait, no, better.
Braille the
We get
Where you put holes in the cards so you can figure out what they are using
No!
braille?
no, we get sleeves. We get sleeves that have like either chalkboard background or like whiteboard eraser background, and then we write like the
Oh
template
golly!
backs of the sleeves, so it isn't on the actual card itself.
That's worse.
How about we whiteboarder all the cards? So we use like a little tab of whitener around the outside of all the
Sharpies,
edges.
Paint Sharpies, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you gotta explain what a whiteboard card is now.
A whiteboarder card.
Yes.
So some of the early Magic sets, starting with Revised, and a lot of the early core sets, which were sets that were printed once a year with a lot of the staples in it that you needed from year to year to year, they would print in white border, which was detested by most of the Magic community, but became infamous with like broken
Ugly
broken
shit.
aspects of Magic.
Also ugly.
Actually, I still have my White Butter Soul Ring, and I play my White Butter Soul Ring, and it's very cool. And I like my
Check
White
us
Butter
out.
Soul Ring.
Out of
I bought it
curiosity.
for Riss.
Okay.
I bought it for Riss. I think I actually bought it for Curio.
I'm one of those monsters that likes to put different versions of basic lands in my deck and different versions of cards in my deck,
Yes,
just
I do
to
that
make
too.
the person like, because I don't care, but usually the person across from me cares a lot and comments on it.
Knowing
when
who
they're
the person
distracted-
across from you usually is, yes, that does not surprise me at all.
I just want to appreciate and admire art of Magic the Gathering throughout all of its history.
Jacob just wants to watch the world burn.
Jacob wants to watch the world burn.
Okay, so real quick, no explanation. What is your What is your favorite format in Magic, Jacob?
Junk rares.
Jacob, I will fucking punch you in the throat. What is your favorite format in Magic? Don't make me answer this question for you.
Commander.
Now you have to explain what a junk rare is.
Junk.
You are a junk rare. You're a junk rare,
You're still calling him rare.
Okay, so like
but junk.
every collectible card game, there's different rarity of cards in booster packs. There's
Hey, that card is amazing. Don't you
Uh,
shit on Damnation. Card is wonderful.
in like all trading card games in booster packs, you have cards of different rarity. You have cards that are more commonly available. And
Commons, uncommons, rares. Get out of my face, the Liliana Veil. Commons, uncommons, rares, mythic rares are the rarity in Magic.
and then from
Black, silver, gold, and red.
So junk. So when Wizards of the Coast prints a new set of cards, or any set of cards, there are going to be cards that are like better, have more impact, cost less mana, do more things, affect the game more, help you win, whatever. Like the good rares. And those are the cards that we were talking about earlier that are
Fry.
worth a lot of money. So junk are cards that are printed at rare, like for
Rarity.
for rarity, and they're still less commonly available, as there's the
Frequency at which
Yeah,
they're
the-
printed.
frequency with which they're printed is the same as all the
Good
other
rares.
as all the good ones. So the junk rares are worth like 10 cents, 50 cents, just
A
because
dollar.
just 'cause
Bad.
they're not as impactful. And I actually have a junk rare cube that is made of cards that are all worth like 12 cents or less. And
You have an entire junk rare
entire
cube?
junk rare cube,
Hey man, don't
cards
don't
worth
bash
12
it.
cents or less, and they're all printed at rare value. Or like
Am I
rare-
the only person that does not have their own cube?
Apparently.
I guess so.
So
I need to
Card
get on
Kingdom-
this. I have a
really
lot
fun.
of cards.
hey, listen up. Card Kingdom has a starter cube that
Yeah.
is awesome. I think it's what is it, $100, $200,
Yeah,
something like that.
Like 150 maybe.
And it comes with everything you need, sleeves and everything to go with basic lands. It's ready to go, and it's designed to be upgradable. But it's designed by a bunch of guys who are all avid cubers who just do nothing else all day long but cube, and they,
It's $99.99.
yeah,
It's $100.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I had a friend who bought one, and they upgrade it every time a set comes out. They'll upgrade it again. It's great. It's
That's interesting.
It's got the basics too. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
they-
I have a lot of. I
no,
have a
it's
lot
not
of
Lumeria.
basics.
Lumeria is their draft format, which is something
Yeah.
completely different. They have a bunch of junk rares in it, but that they will seed packs to be like key draftable. I didn't like that product as much. Some people have said they really like it. I bought a bunch of Lumeria packs and like tried it out for drafting with some friends, and it was fun. I wouldn't say great. Their cube, on the other hand, is fantastic.
I might look into that actually. That sounds like I have way too many basic lands as it is. So
It's a
I
reasonable
might see if I can get a
price.
hold of it without the lands.
Yeah, it's a reasonable
'Cause
price.
I have
full
like
thing.
3 boxes worth of basic lands. It's ridiculous.
I have a big bag.
Um, A bag of lands? You keep them in a bag? Oh no.
Oh my god.
No.
Well,
I
while
can't believe
Fry,
he keeps them in a bag.
I can. While Fry's talking about that, I'll talk about my favorite format because I also love Commander. But I am also a sucker for draft. I will draft any day of the week. Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay. You say bag. You say bag, and I imagine like a giant trash bag full of
was
lands.
thinking like
Okay,
a
it's like a
canvas bag.
legitimate. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair. I have more basic lands than that. I know how big that bag is. I have more basic lands than that. I have way too many basic lands.
I have a
Sorry.
gallon of basics.
Alright, so Brenna's favorite format is Commander, although she loves Draft. Fry, I know what it is, but
It's a hard sell between Commander and Cube.
okay, so here's a question. Do you consider Cube its own format?
Oh yeah,
Yes, I would.
most
as well.
definitely.
You consider it a format beyond Draft? Because
Yeah.
I would foil it into Draft as the same format.
I wouldn't, simply because you're tailoring the experience that you and the people with this cube have, right? So it draft tends to play at a lower power level because due to the
Okay.
nature
Okay, that makes
it's
sense.
less focused. But
Mhm.
with a cube, you can have everyone playing at a really high power level simply because the cards you're putting into your cube and the cards these people are drafting, even the like common lower cards, are powerful cards.
Okay.
Or they
And
all
correct me
suck.
if I'm wrong, but I think like Jacob's cube.
Like
correct me if
Jacob's cube.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Fry, your cube is like a relatively high power level based on some
Yes,
of the
it
cards
is.
I know that you want for cube. Yeah, your
Yes.
cube is pretty considerably high power level.
I
Oh,
played
yeah.
a Legacy Cube once. Like,
Oof.
yeah, I was touching hundreds of dollars worth of cards, and it made me deeply uncomfortable. But they were like, "No, play this cube, it'll be fun," and I was like, "Okay."
Only because it's not usually there, and I have to ask, what's that card in the corner of your whiteboard?
Oh, this is just a card that I have randomly found. It's just Worthy Knight from Thrones. It's actually not a bad card.
2/2 first strike for 2.
No, 2/2, 1 white, 1 colorless, human knight. 2/2. Whenever you cast a night spell, create a 1/1 white human knight.
Okay.
And she's just got cool art.
Oh, Worthy Knight. I'm thinking the M20 Young Knight or something.
Yeah, young knight. And I just put her there because she fits.
Okay.
I don't know.
Fair.
I just have magic cards randomly strewn about. In my car, I have a foil Work a Double from Unstable, and I have what's the other one?
The fact
I
that you
love
know what
Fortune.
cards are floating around in your car is
I
pretty
do.
funny.
Well,
to
because
me.
I put them there. Because
Oh.
I put the Work a Double there from when I was working a lot, and I got the card when I was working like 60 hours a week, so I was like, this is
Fair.
thing. And then the Wall of Fortune is just like a fun, like, hey, things are gonna be great when you're driving in this death trap.
I have a foil
Okay.
animate library.
Anime library is great.
My favorite formats.
I kept it 'cause I won with it.
are Commander, because I like to build decks, and Commander, I will argue, I'll fight you about this, but Commander decks are built at a. Yeah, Fry. Okay, you want me to get my bag? How many decks? Actually, real talk. How many Commander decks do you have, Fry?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 15 decks.
Ooh, okay, I have more than you. I have 9,
Went for the like dual color combinations.
I'm sorry.
18. I have all the leagues, so I have all the except for Izzet because I hate Izzet. So I have all the leagues and several tricolor decks.
I have a variety. I have some monocolor decks. I have 2
Yeah, I have a
four-color
couple
decks.
monos.
I have most of them are 3-color. My favorite being my Teamer deck and my Bug deck.
Folks at home, those deck colors are
Red, green, blue, and green, blue, black.
respectively. Okay. I would say Commander is my favorite format. I believe the decks in Commander are built at a, for lack of a better term, like a more intelligent level. Like you have to put a lot more thought into how you're going to build a deck where there's only one copy of each card that isn't basic land in order for the cards to work together.
It depends
it's
on how
not just-
competitive, but yeah,
That's true.
the
That
idea-
is true.
The idea is that you're trying to connect a theme using single versions of cards. So a lot of
Yeah,
times
theme can
building those
be-
themes.
Infinity Stones, where you go infinite, or it can be Pirates.
Right. And
Or-
a lot of times,
I love my Pirates deck.
Or ladies looking left.
ladies looking left, man. Yeah. That's a great deck. Tony, how
Well,
have you
ladies
never seen
looking-
this deck?
I
That's an
know
actual
what that
deck.
is. I know what that is, but like,
It's a weirdly good deck. It's a weirdly good deck.
My arm is
Is
a
the
T-Rex.
Mimeoplasm
Your
a lady?
argument-
because it's
My-
looking both
Mimeoplasm
directions.
Is a lady.
Because it's looking both directions.
There's a
I'm
really good video about a chair tribal deck where it has a Togatog as the commander, and then all of the cards in the deck have someone sitting in a chair.
Oh, I wanted to make a horse deck. I wanted to make horse tribal so badly because there are
It's so
so
bad.
many. There's so
I
many
tried.
dumb horses. Yeah, I did some research for like a week. This was my like brainchild. I was
Bear
like,
tribal is a thing now.
Now,
horse tribal is viable now because
if
of
you-
Ayula.
Now, you can
Queen
do horse
Bears.
tribal if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and say that horsemanship is acceptable as a replacement.
I did look into
Then
the
your deck is very viable.
Yeah.
Horsemanship being a mechanic in Magic.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh,
a very rare mechanic in Magic that no one runs except in a very small handful of decks.
Okay,
So effectively
so
makes your creatures unblockable.
before we get like way into this, I would say that draft is up there with the format. Although I've never cubed, so that might be getting up there. I really like draft though
How
because
have you never cubed?
because I
Have
didn't
you
know
never-
I didn't fucking know what cube was, Fry. Like people are like, hey, you want to come to my cube? I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, oh, you should cube with me. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, don't tell me to come do this. Like, it could be drugs for all I know. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Come cube with me, bro. Like, what? I've asked you also, and Jacob's brother-in-law, who's like, oh, hey, you want to join my cube? And I'm like, what is cube? And they're like, oh, you gotta try it. Like, no. Like, what? Tell me what it is first. Like, I don't know what that means. Like,
Thousands of children are dying from
from cubes.
teenagers assassination dying
Every day.
corrupted cubes.
That reminds me of the U2 joke or whatever. They're playing in Scotland, and the lead singer like claps his hands. He's like, every time I clap my hands, a child in Africa dies. One of the audience members is like, stop fucking clapping your hands.
Oh, Bono.
But I love draft because it puts everyone on the same. And I will assume, based on what I know, which is limited, obviously, that cube is like this. Shut up, you. But draft puts everyone on the same like power level. Like you can be better. And I think I know what Fry's like hemming and hawing about, because you can be better at building a deck than someone else who might be like better at Magic. Like, you know, what is better at Magic? But like you could be better at deck building than you are at actually playing Magic. But it puts everyone on the same power level because like whether or not you've been playing Magic for 20 years or if you've been playing Magic for 20 minutes, you're all coming in with the same like you're all going to end with the same like availability of cards.
Yeah, it's all
You know,
strictly
discounting your luck, you know, and your packs and so on and so forth. But like you have the same availability of cards. Like you haven't been collecting cards for 20 years and your deck is like $80 million, or you haven't been collecting cards for 20 minutes and your deck is worth $3. Point. That's why I like
I
draft.
work hard to balance the themes in all of my color pairs. So generally speaking, you design to 2 color pairs in a cube. So if you look at the 2 color pairs, you can really see what the theme is. Like I've got blue-white control for my theme in the deck, and I've got red-black aristocrats. And I try to make sure that within those color pairs, there's a balance between them. So if you get the perfect red-black deck, it's as good as the perfect blue-white deck when you pair them off against each other. But of course,
Cube is
you aren't
like a
always
different level of strategy. I think building cube like that, I think is like that's like commander strategy to the like the nth degree. Like building a cube and building a contained collection of cards that strong is like wild to me.
It eliminates part of the luck factor, right?
Mm.
It eliminates that person getting the bomb legendary that's going to win. It like, let's throw back to Thrones of Eldraine. It eliminates the person who pulled an Oko. Like,
exactly.
Fuck that card so much. It's so
Oko
stupid.
is so good.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. I'm so angry about it. Don't. I'm so angry about it. It's so dumb.
I mean, you should also be angry about Oko as a character because he's just a dick.
Yeah, no, like, fucking, why do you think it?
Speaking of draft and cube, and just like power levels, I think that when you're in a draft with booster packs, not a cube, like fresh booster packs that everyone has just opened, one thing that can happen that's bad because that set of cards is not curated specifically to, you know, work together and
In a draft.
like, yeah.
Conspiracy.
Wizards kind of tries, but they're not building a cube whenever they're building a new set. They're building a set not only around drafts, but around the other decks in standard at that time. Also thinking
now they're factoring in Commander, like
A little.
Yeah.
a lot.
I mean, I think a little because they can't. I think Commander is so large at this point, and Jacob, we'll come back to you, I promise. But I think Commander is so large at this point, and it's so like it's its own monster within Magic that if Wizards tries to like rein in and like create like Wizard sanctioned competitive Commander, that they're not going to be able to get a hold of it.
But they're they're at least encouraging people to play it.
That's true. That's true.
That's really what they're taking into consideration. They're encouraging people to not only play play competitively, but also have fun.
If it's your turn, you can put your tangent arm down.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep it up the whole time.
Well, I'm keeping it up for Jacob.
Okay.
Well,
So
there was someone said recently that Commander had outpaced Standard in terms
Yes.
of their moneymaker.
Someone like
It-
some random
Like no, in
some
Magic.
rando or okay.
No,
Like
You
in-
say
it was-
someone, and I'm like, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about. I think it was a Wizard employee who was talking to the professor. I don't remember the specific circumstances, but they were talking about like the economy of the game and where their focus is. And the reason why there's a extended focus to Commander now is because that's where they're selling the most products.
That's
Like,
true. That's
it's
100% true.
Like they're selling packs, yes, but they're selling. But
Singles.
Standard is a set that is up there, but it's not the set that's really bringing in the customer base. I mean, look at the fact that they've made this the year of Commander as their theme for this
Right.
year.
Okay,
Like,
I didn't
that's
know
a-
that
That's
was
my
the
point.
theme this
Yes.
year. But
That's why there's
knowing what I know about the new set, that makes 100% sense.
that's why they're doing 2 full sets of Commanders this year for release. It's not just one. There's not just one Commander 2020 set. There's 2. So
That's-
there's one in the spring and there's going to be one in September, October timeframe.
Good, because the one in September, October, I'm looking forward to, because none of the ones in spring excite me very much.
Well, and there are so many
Point aside.
there's so many high level developers now that also love Commander,
That's true.
like including Mark Rosewater himself. Like he loves Commander, which is why there's also like now a push for more support
Commander unset.
for, like, Commander, yeah, like stuff like that. Like I don't know. There's more of a push for that. Anyway,
I mean, I'm super excited. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine.
Yeah, let's get back to what Jacob was talking about.
as a tangent, I really like Calamax. So anyways, the issue that you can run into when you're building decks in a draft with, new booster packs instead of a cube is, and you could maybe run into this in a cube as well, but if 2 people are seeing cards that work well together and they're like, oh, I want
Yeah.
this,
Okay, I know where you're going.
end up kind of splitting the availability of the cards that have synergy.
So like
and then-
if 2 people are trying to build red white or like
Well, the
Yeah,
best
whatever.
example of
Like
this
they're
was
trying to
in when I started drafting in Shadows of Innistrad, werewolves. Everyone wanted to draft red, green,
in
werewolves.
Shadows?
Yes,
Oh,
in
because
Shadows.
of Ford. Okay.
Because of Arlen Ford and because there were just a lot of good werewolves. I did not do that. I did Simic card draw.
That's because you're a monster.
But, no, I had a lot of fun.
Marty Vampires, baby. Marty Vampires.
Party Vampires is also valuable.
Marta
Yeah.
Vampires is great.
So
Markov
but
Manor.
in a cube, ideally in a cube, the cards are the card list is curated in such a way that everyone can build a good deck instead of people ending up with like
Junk
Oh.
decks.
yeah, or the one person ending up with a deck that is just going to stomp everyone. And that's why there's a lot of skill involved in draft with there's skill involved in draft like cube draft, but in normal draft there's the skill of paying attention to what cards are being picked by other people and like drafting out cards that other people are looking for because you've been seeing those cards kind of like disappear from the pool.
Mm,
And so
that's interesting.
yeah,
That's like that to me that it, and this is something that I know the 3 of you know him, or at least know of him. Gearhart brought up to me once, and at that point it sort of ceases to become card games and sort of becomes mind games.
hmm
Yeah.
But what Jacob's saying, I think is the is the mind games within the card games. Like you have to know how other people are thinking about building their draft.
It brings the social aspect of this card game back into the card game. Because I feel like, and this is, I think, is why Commander is also becoming more popular. For so long, Commander and Modern and a lot of those formats that are like single player games where you're playing against another person, people don't talk when they play those games. And if they do, it's very quick conversations that have no like actual meaning because they're just trying to destroy you.
Commander's very social.
Commander has to be a social format because you're playing against 3 other players, which we didn't actually explain what Commander was, by the way.
Oh shit, you're right.
For how much we love Commander, no one said anything. I will explain Commander.
Okay, I was gonna say real quick, I can explain it in about 5 sentences, but
So
go ahead.
Commander is a 100-card format.
It's also called EDH. Sorry, just
EDH,
point that out.
Elder
EDH
Dragon
is
Highlander.
Okay.
And it is 100 cards singletons, meaning that every card is individual, every card's different, and there's 1 or 2, 1 card primarily that is your commander, which they are 1 card that sits in a completely separate zone from your main deck, and you can cast that card at any time that you can cast that spell. And it's a creature, a legendary
It has to be a
creature.
legendary creature.
It has to be a legendary creature that, or a planeswalker. There are a couple of planeswalkers that say this planeswalker
This card can be your commander.
and they kind of set the tone for your deck. So they set the colors that
Why?
the colors that the creature is determine what colors can be in your deck, and other colors can be in your deck. So that's kind of the general rundown of Commander. And then Brawl is very similar.
Also,
Brawl-
commander, you can only have. Did you say you can only have 1 of each card?
Singleton.
Fry, why are you like this?
Yeah, no, with and similar with Brawl. Brawl is the 60-card version of this that is standard.
And then there is. Fuck, I can't. I have a deck and I can't even remember what it's called.
Oathbreaker?
Canadian Highlander.
Oathbreaker. There's Oathbreaker.
That's sanctioned.
Okay, whatever.
Oathbreaker-
Neither's Commander. Oathbreaker is you get a planeswalker
Yeah.
instead of a legendary creature,
Yeah, they
and
have
you get a
like
spell that also sits in the command zone, and it's 60 cards. I have Oathbreaker vampires, which I'm very
and
proud
each
of.
time
Fight
you
decoys.
each time you cast the spell from the command zone, the next time it returns to the command zone, it costs 2 more to cast.
Two more generic.
2 more generic mana to cast. Unless you play Derevi, in which you can just activate her ability.
Get out of my face. Get out of my face.
You told me to buy that deck!
Hey, you were like, what deck should I buy? And everyone, including me, was like Derevi, so you're not allowed to only blame me. And then, but you only blamed me for how bad the deck was until you realized how to play Magic, and then you started shitting on everyone with it.
No one told me how
Bird
to play the deck.
wizard.
No one told me how to play Derevi. No one told me.
You gonna learn
wizard.
today.
I also
Hey,
have-
that's
I
my
also-
bird wizard, isn't
I
it?
have two bird wizards. I also have the Kaikar deck. There is part of me that does want to just build a bird wizard tribal deck, and just do birds and wizards. Like 4 color birds and wizards.
Okay, since Jacob has to leave real quick, favorite set, no explanation. Jacob.
You'll have to get back to me on that.
Fuck you, Jacob.
Favorite set?
Brenna.
Favorite set, no explanation. Kaladesh.
Fry.
Dragons of Tarkir.
Okay. Original Innistrad block. Jacob, we're back to you.
Can I say a block?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I said Innistrad.
Okay.
Block.
Okay.
We all said blocks,
Alright.
actually.
Yeah.
Cons. Yeah, cons block.
Yeah. Close
I want to
second-
say why, but I said no explanation, so.
Yeah. Close second is Ixalan for me, and that only happened once I started
Because of
running the
D&D, I
campaign.
think.
Yeah. That only happened. Yeah.
Real quick, again, no explanation, but first discussion, no discussion. There's 2 on digital. That was a horrible way to say that. Digital ways to play Magic now. You can play MTG Arena, which reminds me, all of you give me your Arena codes before you leave so that we can play. MTG Arena, which is sanctioned, legal, whatever garbage you want to put in there. It's free. You can download it and play.
Run by Wizards.
Run by Wizards. You can download it and play Magic digitally. It kind of bothers me that you have to have now an entirely new set of cards that are all just digital, but that's neither here nor there. There's also MTG Online, which I know a little about, but from what I know about it is less appealing to me than Arena.
You have to spend money on the cards.
Dumb.
You don't have to spend money in Arena. You have to spend money in MTGO. MTGO. So,
Okay. So on that note, Jacob, Arena or Online?
As far as preferences?
Yeah.
The free aspect of Arena is awesome. MTGO can be really cheap.
Magic
Like,
the Gathering Online.
Magic the Gathering Online is much cheaper than Paper Magic, and you can play. You don't have to worry as much about card availability at like your local game store or anything. So there's that, but I do not like the interface of Magic the Gathering Online. I think
clunky.
it's dumb.
It's chunky.
Arena.
It's not good.
Not even
Arena's
clunky.
a lot
It's
better.
chunky. Okay.
It's both.
So
Arena, Brenna.
Arena.
I'm interested to know what Fry thinks.
Neither. I don't play either.
Okay. I would have said neither, but I started really playing Arena like this morning. And it's interesting. Like I'm not gonna play it more than I play Paper Magic, but I'm gonna play it more than I play Paper Magic now while we're playing Magic the Distancing instead of Magic the Gathering.
It supplements, right?
Okay. Jacob, before you have to go and before we rock out today, do you have any real quick thoughts about the new set? We will probably reconvene either with or without Fry on another episode, or we'll make it the bit next episode and talk about the new set. But Jacob, do you have any like real quick thoughts?
Mutate is a cool mechanic thematically. However, mechanically for the way that Magic is, it is very underpowered.
I could not agree more. I've been thinking about how to put that
Literally.
into words. That's perfect. That's perfect.
It struggles with the enchantment problem where you load up all of your things onto one thing and then targeted removal removes that thing.
Oof. Okay, so since Jacob, before we had the worst possible discussion at the end of a Dr. Z episode, that is the best possible thing that we have said at the end of the Dr. Z episode. So with that, we're going to end today's episode, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Adios.